All right, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to a brand new, very special episode of the Pastrami Nation Podcast today. I'm Kevin, and of course, joining me today, as usual, is my son, Elijah. What's going on, man?
Doing good.
Doing good. It's your last day off of school. You had a 4-day weekend. I know you got to go back to school tomorrow morning. It's a bummer for you. And of
At
course,
least I get to see my friends.
yeah, you get to see your friends. And of course, he's known around here as the godfather of toys, Mr. Christian Nacorda. What's going on, man?
I don't know if your friends will recognize you with your new haircut, Elijah. Your hat doesn't even fit anymore.
I know. It's crazy. He got his whole buzz and everything like that. So, y'all, on today's show, we have a very special guest joining us today. His name is Josué Cardona, and he is the founder of Geek Therapy, which is a really cool and interesting approach to mental health, essentially. There's loads more to it, but Josué, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah. It's so cool to have you here. So, one of the things on our podcast specifically, but Pastrami Nation as a whole, mental health is a big deal. So it's an honor to have you on to be able to talk about how to integrate the things we love into, helping us feel better a little bit and how that technique works and stuff like that. But first, let's talk about Geek Therapy a little bit. So if you don't mind, giving us your origin story and how did Geek Therapy come about? Like, what was the spark and how did you create this organization?
Sure. Yeah. So right now we're a nonprofit organization. We put on, actually in 2 weeks, we have an event that's a big conference that we've been doing every year for the past, this will be our 4th year. And we got started back in 2011. I was still in the school studying to become a mental health counselor. And I was working with kids at a hospital, and like I'm connecting with these kids. I'm geeking out. We're talking about all their favorite stuff, their favorite TV shows, their favorite superheroes, a lot of Pokemon talk, and of course video games, right? Like all these kids.
Of course.
It's interesting. Over the years, I love to talk about how video games, like, these kids were small, but their parents played video games. So it was very different than like when I was growing up, right? So they're playing video games with their parents. So it's just a common language that we all had. And so we're playing a lot of board games. We have toys. And one day I'm looking through like our games closet and I see that we have a Nintendo Wii in there. And I go to my supervisor. I'm like, oh, we have a Wii. Like I have some ideas. We can do some group work. Like there's some really good games for playing as a group. No. She said, she was like, no, I don't know about that. Video games, like, I don't think that's a good idea. And she just gave me all these negative reasons. So basically out of spite that day, I went home and I started a website and I was like, okay, Geek Therapy, I'm going to prove it to her that there is already so much information about how we can use geek culture in good ways and people are doing it. So different types of technology, different types of media being used in education and healthcare and in mental health. And we started from there and we've been podcasting and creating media and building things out ever since.
That's very cool. So I was looking at the website and everything, and can you kind of explain, like, so how does that work exactly? So, you're implementing, pop culture and things that people love into therapy. So can you have this thing, affinity plus resonance equals understanding. Can you kind of explain that a little bit and that the theory behind that and how that works in a typical kind of therapeutic type setting?
Please do, because just by hearing that, I am a little bit confused.
Yeah. We reworded it recently to like the 3 A's, which are affinity. And the first one, like affinity, if you look it up, it's this idea of like, it's stuff that calls to you. It's the stuff, basically, when we're talking to geeks, it's like, it's the stuff that you're into. I don't know why I love Naruto so much. I just do. I'm not thinking about it, right? I love anime. I love video games. We love toys. You don't have to think about it much, right? So that idea of like an affinity towards something, it's just what you're into. So then this idea of, instead of resonance is part of it, but this idea of activation, it's like, why watching this particular show, something that you're really into, like watching Star Wars, do you feel so strongly when when the rebels are fighting the Empire versus when you're watching, I don't know, a historical drama? about, I don't know, World War I or something like
Mhm.
that, right? There's something about the fact that you've got this affinity for this particular content or this theme. And so you're like more open to the ideas that are being presented. And because you're more open to it, like you're more willing to feel and think about things almost in a
Right.
deeper sense.
Hmm.
And so by doing that, and if you're working with somebody, it doesn't just have to be in therapy, right? But this all came from psychotherapy practices. If you're working with somebody who can then help you tap into that, it's like if you're watching a movie with somebody and then it's that moment where you get to reflect on it and talk to each other about it. It's like, what did you
Right.
think of that part? Why did it bother you when that happened? Or why did you love that this happened? How did you feel about this? So imagine being in a therapeutic relationship, right? You're meeting with your
Right.
therapist, you're talking about something that is really affecting your life, and you're trying to work on that. And maybe you don't have the words exactly to talk about it, but you saw it in the movie. You can talk about it. You read it in that book, right? Like I
Mhm.
saw it in that comic book. You can bring that up, and it helps us talk about that, and it helps us explore our feelings and our thoughts and our beliefs in a I'm gonna say safe space, but I don't mean like in the space with the therapist. I mean
Right.
like Naruto's world is safer for me. Gundam, like I
Yeah.
understand that world, and I can navigate these thoughts and feelings there, and it's a little separated from me, but I'm so familiar and close to it that it's very meaningful to me, and so the entire experience and the entire exploration then becomes very meaningful. And I found that it's been very powerful. And when people do this, I think it accelerates like the therapeutic process in a way, because you can move forward pretty quickly.
Mhm.
And like, oh, no, like I understand this a little easier than if we were just talking about it directly.
Right.
Or I'm able to tap into these emotions a little sooner. And it's just been, it's also a lot of fun for the therapist and for the clients. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of advantages to it, but the core idea is that's like once you have that thing that you have an affinity for, once your feelings are activated, that's an opportunity to explore that and really understand what is going on.
Mhm.
And a good therapist can definitely work with that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome because that's kind of what, even just doing this podcast, right? Like we're not, none of us are medical professionals, hosting the podcast, but we're able to come here to this space and talk about the things that we love in a kind of a meaningful way, which is really cool. But it is a form of therapy, right? Like it's not like, I wouldn't, I
Yeah.
still want to go see a therapist, but it's our form of being able to talk about the things that we love in a really cool way, in a really cool environment, and really engage in those conversations and stuff like that. Which is really cool. And go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead, Christian.
Josué, I don't know if you know, am I saying your name correctly? Josué?
Yeah, Josué. Yeah.
Yeah, so I come from an education background. I've been teaching for like 20 years, starting next year, so it'll be a long time. I work with kids. I also work in entertainment design, so I work with like a lot of kids that move on to like video games, television, movies, TV, and all that.
Yeah.
I do a lot of like game development stuff. I did a lot of that in the past, and I 100% agree with everything that you're doing. We do brick therapy, we do all this, but I think sometimes it's difficult for people to really directly explore whatever issues they might be going through, traumas that they might have directly. Sometimes like talking about Spider-Man or talking about Captain America is a much easier, safer, very indirect, but still kind of a good way for people to like understand, wrap their head around what they're going through, kind of see it from a safer place, and then maybe move into like, really, really kind of confronting these powerful big things. But yeah, I think for a lot of people, not only is it a safe space for them mentally, but also to find that community, we just had WonderCon here. Josué, where are you, by the way?
I'm currently in Chicago.
Chicago. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, look at us. We're all over the place. I know. Well, Kevin's about to be in Chicago. Like,
Yeah, I'm doing a C2E2 at the end of the month.
C2's great. Yeah.
I can't wait. It'll be my first time there.
Which
Awesome.
is another thing, right? A big community of people coming together with their affinities, right?
Yeah.
Coming together, things that are so important to them that they're buying tickets They're spending
Mhm.
months making costumes,
Yep.
saving up a bunch of money so they can all be together and celebrate these things that we love, that make us feel happy.
Yep.
Whether that's allowing us to escape our traumas or confront them. I think it's beautiful what you're doing. So,
and in the education space, there's so much that I've learned from educators and teachers, right? Like even something just as basic as like the difference between a student that you force to read a particular book versus letting them choose something that they want to read, and how different of an experience that is for them.
Heavenly.
And it's those kinds of ideas, right, that we're building on within therapy as well. It's like bring a piece of yourself, or let's tap into those interests. Let's tap in. Your interests are very much their strengths.
Yeah,
and if we start from
absolutely.
those strengths, absolutely we can get much farther.
It's funny to me. There's this sect of, especially like in the fine art community, there's these artists who refuse to look at other people's artwork because they don't want to be subconsciously influenced by those people's artwork. But to me, I feel I would never encourage artists to be that way. Like you said, celebrate those things that you love. Like if those are the things that inspire you, why aren't you celebrating those things? Also, you need to be aware of what's going on in like the industry too. So I don't know, but yeah, 100% celebrate the things that you love.
Yeah, absolutely. And would go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I love it when like my Latin comp teachers, they let us bring our own books to read because we have like 15 minutes at the start of every class.
Yeah.
And I love it when they do that. So then I can just like bring one of my like a manga that I love to read, like Jujutsu Kaisen or the Seven Deadly Sins, and read that.
Yeah,
Exactly. Way better.
Yeah, and it gets you more engaged, right?
Yeah.
Like you're more interested in what's going on. Yeah, I was going to bring that up with you. It's hard to you're not particularly a chapter book kind of guy. Like you're
Not
more
really.
you're not a novel. You're a graphic novel, comic book, but you're still reading, and you're more engaged in those kind of types of things. So,
also, I think when you do find the right book, I think that sometimes it's just finding the right book.
Absolutely.
Like I am willing to try and read a chapter book, but if it's not for me, then I will just put it down.
Yeah. Oh, you will. Absolutely.
I think the first novel I ever bought was a novelization of the death and life of Superman.
Oh, nice.
It was like it was like a novelization of that whole arc of the comics. And
that's cool.
I remember a lot of books that I bought were like the Halo video game series. Like there's a lot of novels set in that world.
Mm-hmm.
Like my niece reads a lot of Star Wars novels because that's what she loves, So I think there's that's like a way to get in there, right? You can it's transmedia, right? It's like, oh, there's audio dramas, and there's books, and there's a TV show, and there's a cartoon, and there's whatever type of media you want. We can engage with that.
We'll be getting a Minato novel soon. We'll be getting a Dabi novel soon from My Hero.
Mm-hmm.
Like a bunch of these fan favorite characters from multiple anime manga series are getting their own novels.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. So let's talk about there's all these. So unfortunately, there's still kind of this stigma against, or not against, but when it comes to surrounding mental health,
like talking about,
talking about mental health and opening up and seeking help that people really need sometimes. Have you actually found in your kind of professional experience, or people that or whatnot, has this method actually helped kind of open people up more to coming to therapy? Like once they hear about it, are they more willing to seek out therapy? I don't even know if there's any kind of statistics to back anything like this up, but I'm curious. Have you noticed an increase in people actually coming out and saying, hey, I need to find a therapist or whatever, talking about their mental health in general?
So when I was starting out in therapy, I remember having a client who came to me and she said, the reason why I chose you is because you were the most exotic person on the list of therapists, right? So basically, like everybody else was white, and you were something else. So I want to see somebody else, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And so that's the way it works, really. It's like you want a male therapist, you want a female therapist. You want somebody who you want somebody who's black, somebody who's white. Like you want maybe some kind of connection. once I started promoting, like, I remember my first private practice website, I put, these are the languages that I speak. And I was like, English, Spanish, science fiction, fantasy. And I just started going down the line, right?
Yes.
Right. And then like anime, blah, blah, blah. I kept going down the line like that. And then people were like, oh, yeah, like I love fantasy.
Yeah.
I love science fiction. I play video games. And so they would reach out. What we hear a lot now is I have my son, my daughter, my husband, my wife, they've gone to other therapists and like it hasn't worked out. Maybe we can try with someone who is into this or is into that. So when we get referrals at the organization, we ask them like, what are you looking for? And there's the usual, I'm in this state, I'm in California, I've got Blue Cross Blue Shield,
Right.
into Fortnite, right? Like plays Minecraft, right? Like really into Star Wars, more Star Trek than Star Wars, right? Like you hear things like that. I'm like, all right, we'll see what I can do. Let's see who we can find for you. And so there is a willingness to, or like again, I think it's that openness. Like if I could find somebody who I could talk to about this, that would be great. And like I had a therapist once who he didn't advertise anything like that, but we started meeting and it was during the pandemic. So, but he always had movie posters behind him.
Oh, that's cool.
And I was like, I just watched John Wick. And he's like, yeah, no, it was great. Right. I was like, yes. Okay, awesome. Like that reminds me of something. And it's that kind of connection, right? There's this openness to it. When I've worked with kids in the past, I remember, so I was working at the same place where the Nintendo Wii thing happened. It was a big program at a hospital, and there were other counselors there as well. And I remember a few of them were really annoyed. They're like, oh, these two kids, they just keep making weird noises. Or there was this one kid in particular, he just keeps making these weird noises and he won't stop. I'm like, what? I don't like, what's the big deal? And they're like, I don't know. He's just annoying. He's just annoying everybody. He's making noises. So I go and I listen to him. And what I hear is like, Licky Tongue, Pikachu, Polygon. And I'm like, he's just reciting Pokemon names. Like what, like, and the moment that he realized that someone in the room knew what he was talking about, that was an instant connection. Yeah. And it's hard to do that, right? Like there isn't such a thing. I really enjoyed geeking out with Elijah before we started recording. You hit me with a bunch of anime and I was like, I've seen that one. I know that one. I see this one. That's not always the case, right? Like sometimes I'll say, oh, I'm a big sci-fi person. And they'll be like, have you read this novel? I'm like, no, I haven't. Right. But if there's like a general openness and just knowing that like, oh, you like anime? I like anime too. You like X-Men? I like X-Men. Which version have you seen? That alone, like there's this idea called rapport, right? Like within therapy, or like you're building that rapport with a client or with your therapist. And that helps a lot. It's like if you're at WonderCon, you're like, I think that's my therapist over there. The next session is going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, that's really cool. Yeah, I love. It's just all about building that community and that just the repertoire with the other person. And I think that goes for any part of life. Like I said, the podcast, or even if you're just like I for my job, I actually drive around a lot. I'm in pest control, but I do a lot of training. And when I have someone else in my van with me hanging out, whatever, it's nice when we're able to open a conversation about something that we both love. Like, this guy I'm training right now, we're talking about like, Disneyland and Disney and X-Men and all these things. And it makes for a more enjoyable experience. And I do find that I'm more open to teaching them new things, and it's a different kind of relationship that you build with people. And I think that's really neat that you're able to do that.
Do you ever bring up like once they also know Disney, then you can bring up examples like metaphors and stuff from it. Yeah, exactly. That's a big part of it too. It's like, oh, like how this character did that. They're like, yeah, that's exactly what I feel like. Or no, actually, it's not like that. It's like, oh, well, tell me why. And then either way, the conversation is flowing.
So I teach, like, it's a big part. Entertainment's a big part of my class, regardless of what I need it to be or not. I teach anatomy, but like I'm teaching entertainment design. So a lot of it is talking about the design aesthetic of like this game or this movie or that. I know, like, that's, to me, the first day of class is connecting. It's not about teaching them anything on the first day. I have to connect. I feel like that's the most crucial thing. If I'm not going to make that connection on the first day, I'm not going to have them for the entire semester. And like, there's a couple of things that I got to connect, and I got to prove like that they can trust me that I'm going to teach them. But the connecting is like, what's the stuff you're into? Me too, dude. So the first thing I do, I know it's the painful thing in class, but it's like, oh, let's go around the class. What's your name and where are you from and what's your major? But like, yeah, everybody hates it. But the one big question they ask is, what was the last good movie that you saw? Good movie, TV show, or video game that you're playing? And if you're not into any of those things, what the hell are you even doing here? Which I can say because that's exactly what our school is about. So, and it's a fun way for all of us to get to know each other. We immediately know about our fandoms. We can all compare, like, and I tell them at the end, I'm like, honestly, if you haven't figured this out, I'm doing this to get recommendations. So it's cool. They get to share the things that they really love, and it's a good way to start off the class. So, 100%, it's a great icebreaker.
In the psychology world, there are some theories that do not, like, they have as a strict rule that you are a blank slate as a therapist, and you don't let your patients or your clients know anything about you, because that is a problem. I obviously disagree greatly with that. And there's also some concepts that are like, I don't care if the patient doesn't like me, as long as I can help them, right? Like, I'm a good therapist. They don't like my style. It doesn't matter, as long as they're being helped. Mm-hmm. That one, I'm not completely in favor of, because it just makes everything so much easier, right? And it just flows. And I mean, I had a teacher, I remember in college, way before the geek therapy stuff, but he just always made Star Wars references, like, all the time, and he just always had a Star Wars t-shirt on, and if somebody did something well, he'd be like, impressive. Most impressive. And you're like, yes, okay, I get it. I once went to a concert and he was there and he saw me, he's like, oh, and just like it was one of those things where it's like, I will always remember that professor. And I learned more with him than I did with any other. I don't remember any of my other professors. And this is my whole bachelor's degree. Like, I don't remember anybody except him.
I've run into students at concerts as well, at Coachella. I ran into 2009. Greg Edwards, what's up? Shout out Greg Edwards. I've and then also recently Queens of the Stone Age. Anyway.
Yeah. And I mean, why not bring that into, like, it's so meaningful in education, right? Like, we know how important those relationships are between teachers and students. And I think with therapists, those relationships are also super important. And there's this, for anyone who hasn't been to therapy, there's usually an intake process at the beginning. So, like, your first session really isn't a session. It's really more of an interview, and you've got to fill out a long form. And I always tell people, and in all my trainings, I tell them, add questions, like what you were saying, Kevin. You got to add, like, oh, what movie are you into? Or what did you really like recently? And I'm like, hey, what are you into? What is your favorite movie? What are your favorite books? Put all of that in there, because we can build off of that. And just the fact that you're asking, like, what do you like? Instead of only asking what hurts and what's wrong with you. Mm-hmm. Again, it also just sets the stage for something much better.
Focusing on the positive.
Exactly.
That's incredible. So you have a couple comments. Hey guys, what's up, Arturo? How's it going? This is some type of therapy. Anthony Blanco asks, can we really be into something and also casual at the same time? I consider myself a huge anime fan, but being confronted by an anime enthusiast, I feel like maybe I really don't like anime like I do. LOL. Or do we have tiers of nerdism?
We don't have tiers of nerdism. We just have, like, how deep people are into it. I feel like that's the only tiers that we have.
Like, tiers? So, like, I kind of get that. I wouldn't, standing next to Eli, I wouldn't consider myself an anime fan. I know so little. Like, I consider myself a Gundam fan, and even then, I'm, like, afraid of how much more Eli probably knows than I do. So,
I don't know much about Gundam other than the mechs. I haven't watched it. I'm being totally honest here.
Even then, it's like Gundam Wing. That's really all I know. So and
What do you
like
think
some
about that,
unicorn
Josué?
stuff.
Do you have an
Yeah.
opinion on that? I mean, I personally think that's. I
Yeah,
think
I'm
you can
not-
be a fan
yeah.
of stuff and not know everything. You're
Yeah.
fine.
Exactly. I think who cares if you like something, you like something. Like there's
Yeah.
nobody.
I think there's a lot of gatekeeping that
Yeah.
happens, right? Which is the problem, which is like why it makes people like I think those questions come up often.
Mhm.
And we're
Yeah.
talking about like when you go to C2E2, when you go to WonderCon, you go to Comic-Con, like,
Yep.
for the most part, everybody is there to celebrate these things that they love.
Mhm.
And like we're all standing in line, and we're not standing in line in order of how much we know or we don't know. It's like we just kind of want to see this. So I think you can. It reminds me of like I've met people who wear graphic tees,
Mhm.
like a Batman symbol, just because they think Batman symbol is cool. They've never read a Batman comic, they've never
Right,
watched the movie,
right.
they don't know. They just think like because
But-
it's popular culture at that point.
Right. But
You know,
to
like-
somebody who's a diehard Batman fan, they're like, hey,
Maybe
call
right?
them out or
or
something.
you open a conversation, right? Like I think it has to do with who's there.
right.
Yeah. So hopefully you encounter somebody who is nice. Wants to
If
talk
I
to
see
you about
that and I go up to talk to them and they're like, "Oh, I don't know who this is. I just really like the symbol." Then I'd be like, "Okay, well, why don't we try like maybe reading it? Because like not in a dick kind of way, but like try and get them into it instead of just like trying to push them away from it."
Yeah. No. Exactly.
So like I was at WonderCon just this past weekend and I dressed up like Casey Jones from Ninja Turtles. 3 separate times people walked up to me, a full mask, right? Like I had headphones on too. Like they were under my wig, but I couldn't see it. But like people would come up to me and they're like, "Oh, Casey Jones, really cool. Do you remember issue 22 on the Eastman and Laird run where Casey Jones, do you remember exactly what Casey Jones said to Raphael?" And I was like, "Cool, man. It's good seeing you too, buddy." Like, what are you doing? Are you trying to test me because you want to see how much of like get out of here, dude? Like
it's so funny. Like I think all of these are really good examples of like learning how to navigate relationships.
Mhm.
Because somebody might be really into it and they are coming at you with so much positivity, but they
Right.
could always also be somebody who's a jerk and is trying to test you, and like you don't know, and it's we've got everything in geek culture, right? And I think I think it's funny. I think there's some fandoms in particular that like you can't win. Like
Mhm.
I've watched all of Naruto and I like Boruto, right? And some people might be like, "Oh, that you haven't watched the latest series," but other people will be like, "Ew, you like Boruto? Ew, that's stupid." I'm like, I can't win.
I think I'm not trying to tell anybody how they should be with their nerdism. If they want to be however they want to be with their nerdism. My whole thing is if somebody tells me that they've not heard of something there, I'm like you've never heard of Star Wars. Like I would never react like, how have you never heard of blah? Like to me, that's always the most exciting thing. Like I have a friend recently. I can't even remember what it was. It was like G.I. Joe or Ghostbusters or something. Like to us, there's something like it's like one of the like the Holy Trinity. You know what I mean? And they were like, "What's Ghostbusters?" And it's like I almost got like lightheaded, but like really, it was like to me that's just exciting. Anytime somebody tells me that, I'm like, oh my gosh, like boy do I got some stories for you, because like that's really cool that you haven't heard of that. Then like or like somebody telling you that they've never heard of a band that you love, like
Oh yeah.
like, oh, just give me a couple hours because I got some stuff to show you. Like it should be fun. We should never let anybody feel bad about like just learning about something. Like
No, yeah.
This is a very positive group right here, by the way. Like not everybody's like this.
Yeah, no, I love it, and I love what you said about I love what you said about Comic-Con earlier too, because so I'm very open with my mental health struggles and what I deal with on a daily basis, anxiety, depression, things like ADHD, things like that. But when I go to a place like Comic-Con, it truly kind of is an immersive. I kind of feel like I found my tribe there, right? I kind of feel like everyone's not everyone's on the same page. I don't know what everyone's struggling with, that everyone's dealing with, but people are just there to celebrate what they love. It's a happy place, and you're not trying to one up each other. You're not trying to say, hey, like I'm better, I know more about this than you do. It's just a really cool place where people come together and
Yep.
celebrate, and it's a really cool feeling being there. And a lot of my anxiety and my stress and all that stuff, a lot of it does go away to an extent when I'm in places like that, even though it's crowded. And of course, I get social anxiety really bad and stuff, but when I'm
I
there,
forgot I had social anxiety. I was
yeah,
so
I mean,
excited.
that's the thing. It's like you're so excited and you're talking to people and you're communicating and you all share the same language. And I think like Comic-Con, C2E2, WonderCon, all that stuff are beautiful things, and they truly help with people who, some people, obviously I'm part of the some people. I don't know everyone's story, like I said, but it's always a really, really cool, really, really fun, really positive experience, which I love. And I love learning new things there too. Like there are people who are into things that I've never heard of, but I'm like, tell me a little bit more about this. Or like you're walking past someone's booth who has a really cool new comic, and you're like, tell me about this book. I want to know what it's about.
We don't have
It's really cool.
here.
No, we have a lot. So, but yeah, so let's talk about the TAG Summit that's going to be coming up. This is the event that you guys are putting on. So what does TAG stand for, first of all?
Yeah, so it is therapeutic and applied. So therapeutic uses and applied meaning like intentional use of geek and gaming culture, right? So it's like, how do we use games and how do we use geek culture in this way? Like, how do we intentionally use it? So that's the TAGG. And we have been doing this conference where it is every year it changes a little bit, but the idea is that it is half Comic-Con. Like it should be a little more Comic-Con than any other professional conference you've ever been to.
Right.
So if somebody is coming in cosplay, that's encouraged. And all of the topics, if you look at the schedule, you'll see that we have 3 tracks. One is entirely dedicated to tabletop role-playing games and the applied and therapeutic use of that. So we've got teachers coming with their students talking about how they use them in class. We've got different therapists from around the world who use it in different ways. We've got another track that is called Media Matters. So that one touches a little on representation and, like what are we seeing? Not just representation of people, but representation of experiences. So like, I know we have one on Native American representation in video games, I believe. And we have, how therapy is portrayed and things like that, right? Like we've covered things like that over the years. And then Geek Out Do Good is more of the applied one where it's like, okay, here are some tips and tricks, ways that you can use geek culture, gaming culture in therapy and education, more of a hands-on, this is instructional. They're all educational, but those are kind of how we've split them up into 3 categories.
Very cool. And this event, it takes place over a weekend, correct? And is it?
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly for like, is it? I know it's generally for like industry professionals and things like that, but is it open to the public, or are people who are interested in this kind of therapy and stuff? Are they able to attend and check it out?
Yeah. So it is. Are you guys familiar with GDC, the Game Developers Conference?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yes.
And so they have this model. They have something called the Vault. So like it's like $5,000 to go to GDC. It's super expensive.
Yeah, ridiculous.
I've never been able to go. I probably never go. It's super expensive. But they do this thing where like they start releasing the presentations from the event, and they start. I think they put them in like this vault, and then they go on YouTube and they're free for people to see. Yeah. So we're a nonprofit, right? This is, like there's a ticket to see the event live. Then you can buy a ticket to see all the recordings afterwards. But then after 1 year, we have a vault, like again, inspired by the GDC. So after 1 year, we make them all available. So by the time that Tags 4 comes up in a couple weeks, every presentation from year 1, 2, and 3 will be available for free.
That's great.
Online. Yeah. So there's like over 100 hours at that point of different presentations, and there's a lot of cool stuff in there. There's a few anime ones there, Elijah. You want to check them out? There's some good stuff. And actually this year I think we have one called My Hero Therapy is one, like an anime related one. I'm doing a Spider-Man one.
Need that.
Yeah.
You're doing a Spider-Man one? That's really cool.
Yeah, there's a very like famous psychology book called Man's Search for Meaning. And so I'm I'm doing Spider-Man search for meaning, and I'm using a
I love
few
it.
stories from recent years and talking about existentialism and like finding meaning in life and how, but I'm using Spider-Man stories to talk about that. And that's the type of thing that we're doing there. That's the type of thing we do as an organization. Like, how do we talk about important things? How do we bring it up? I think it's just so much fun to
Yeah.
do it, right? Like from our perspective, I think it helps a lot with burnout for professionals. So it is absolutely open to anybody who's licensed or not licensed, any type of helping professional. You're welcome. And if anybody wanted to, you do community practice, you're a teacher, you want to come, like, ask your employer to buy you a ticket to go and check it out. And then for mental health professionals, we offer continuing education for the courses. So, little by little, hopefully we'll be able to offer that for teachers and other professions in the future.
Very
But
cool.
yeah, so we're hopefully the geekiest professional conference
I love it.
around.
I love it. And
For sure.
I
from
did
what
get a
I've heard.
chance to look at some of the panels you guys will be hosting and stuff. I mean, this is one of my, what if Darth Vader practiced positive psychology? I really, really love that one. Sounded really cool.
Then he wouldn't be a Darth.
Right. The power of friendship, mental health, protective factors in anime and manga, which I think is also really, really cool. There's one in here that I kind of just wanted to talk about real quick because it's
Sure.
the whole topic itself is so we live in an age of geek culture and the internet. And the internet can be a very great place, but obviously there's oftentimes when it gets a little murky and a little bit muddy and nobody wants to go there, especially when it comes to geek culture, sometimes specific communities and stuff like that. We talked about it a little bit earlier. But this one right here, the press F to resist toxic masculinity and heteronormativity in geek therapy. This one really, really caught my eye because there's obviously, we're all guys here just hanging out, chatting, whatever. But you show, there's this pushback against representation in a lot of media nowadays. And I think over the past decade or so, there's been a really good push towards representing underrepresented cultures, communities, things like that in film, TV, whatever it may be. But also with that comes the negativity as well. I'm curious from a fan standpoint and someone who lives. I make a lot of friends online, right? Like that, I find communities online and stuff. But you often stumble into these communities where, it's almost impossible to avoid a lot of the toxicity and stuff like that comes with some of your favorite things. And of course, you don't want to lose
Call of Duty,
Star Wars, whatever the case may be. But you don't want to lose that spark and what you love about it. I'm curious, do you have any recommendations as a professional, like how to kind of cut through all that noise? I mean, is it really as simple as just avoiding the internet? I mean, there's got to be. I'm curious if there's anything that we can do as fans to really kind of push that toxic culture out and kind of pave like a more positive path for what's going on in media, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It is. It is hard.
I know
to do, but you have to be. It takes effort on our part to make our experience on different platforms more enjoyable.
Okay.
And we have to do some work because YouTube, TikTok aren't going to do that for us because those get the most engagement and they're pushing for engagement. They're not pushing for positivity, right? Like the computer isn't looking at it could measure positivity and negativity. Like we have the technology to do that, but it's not being used that way. And so, people like to engage and so I hate reading comments.
Yeah, no, so do I.
When in toxic gaming, for example, right? Like that one's because I could say in real life, how do you avoid toxic people? Right. And it's like, well, you're exposed to fewer people than you are on the internet. So it's a little easier, but I think the tactics are the same. Like playing online, all of a sudden you're in a room with 16, 32 different people. and you're hearing stuff, and it's like, that's why like I only play with my friends, or I play without a headset on, depending on the game. And then like, or like if I find people who are cool, then I friend them, and people who are not cool, I'll block them, or I'll just try not to play with them again. Right? It takes a little effort to do that. The platforms make it easier to make friends and connect with people.
Yes.
But they also make it easier to meet the worst people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Ever born. They're everywhere. So yeah, I mean, we're talking about anime earlier. It's so funny Like I read webtoons, and I like Crunchyroll, and like they have comments under the videos, and that's so different than like going on a YouTube video. Like a YouTube video is all negative, but on Crunchyroll, people are like, "Yeah, no, I love it. Can't wait for the next episode." And I'm like, "Oh, yes, I love this."
Change on YouTube, because some communities are more toxic than others. There are some communities that have like, you can go through the comments and it's like a lot of positivity, a lot of love, a lot of support, and then there's like the IGNs where it's just like, your eyes are gonna burn. Don't
everybody hates IGN.
Yeah,
they watch. It's like there are people who just watch IGN to comment how much they hate it.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's better than just going to the site and just saying how bad you hate it, because at least they're watching it and like.
Yeah, but they shouldn't be doing that in the first place.
I know. It sucks that they do it.
It's kind of defeating. But yeah, the So it is nice it's nice to find a place online where you can kind of escape that toxicity, or at least even get some tools on how to deal with it. You know what I mean? Because you can only hope that everywhere you go is nice and, friendly, but every now, of course, you're gonna unwarranted, like, I didn't ask for anybody's opinion. Now I'm like getting judged. Sorry, man.
Like I've recently joined the R6 community, and the times that I've said like, "Hey, I'm new to the game, so please like point out what I'm doing wrong instead of insulting me," compared to the games that I don't do that, it's very good when they actually do point out my like the errors that I make when they're spectating me or when they're playing with me, compared to when they're just like, "Oh my god, dude, this kid's so bad. Like, can we like kick him or something?" Yeah.
There's some good people out there too in all of these spaces.
Right, of course.
And
absolutely 100%.
And they may not be as vocal. But I mean the most, I think like the most real answer I can give is that like ideally it wouldn't bother us, right? Like can you get to a point mentally and emotionally where you're like, that has nothing to do with me?
Yeah.
The problem goes back to this affinity piece, right? It's like, it hurts me more when you say something negative about the new Star Wars trailer than it does about the new Grey's Anatomy trailer, right? Like I don't care about one of those, and the other one I feel personally slighted, and there's no reason for that other than I think it goes back to that openness, right? It's like, I'm here, I love this stuff, and then all that negativity, it just feels worse, I think, because that's not what you're there for.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
this is my place. This is the perfect place where I escape all the bad stuff. So
like what you're trying to like, sorry if I'm wrong, but like what you're trying to say is it hurts more when you like something, like when I like Assassin's Creed Syndicate compared to when people are like saying that it's the worst game of the series compared to like, the new ones.
Yeah.
Right.
Like that hurts a lot more than like somebody saying like, "Oh, like let's say I have nothing to say here."
Yeah, I understand though. Yeah. It's exactly.
I'll give you another example. I mean, Syndicate is not the worst of the series.
Some people say it is, and it's mostly like the new players saying it is.
Yeah, but I mean, there's always somebody, right? Like, so look, I'm gonna confess something here that always causes drama. Less so now as I get older, but Phantom Menace is my favorite Star Wars movie. I don't care. Come at me. See, the younger people get it. Older people, they don't like that. They don't want to talk to me afterwards.
I
It's
love
still my
it
favorite.
because of the character that it introduces and kills off in the same movie, but comes back in the Clone Wars.
I wouldn't. It's not the worst of the.
It brings up emotion. It brings up emotions in
Yeah.
people. Right. And so like I'm like, yeah, like I'm so happy that my niece, she's like 12 now. She's really into Star Wars. She has surpassed me in knowledge and in dedication to the franchise. And she, like, I told her, oh, the like Phantom Menace is coming back to theaters this May.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we gotta go see it. Right. I was like, oh yeah, that movie came out before you were born. Right. We gotta go watch it. So I'm very excited. It's still my favorite one. And
That's fair.
that gets people riled up.
Well,
And I'm
yeah,
not
that
doing it
movie
to
coming
be
out.
like to start something.
Hey, no, I honestly legitimately think The Last Jedi is one of the best Star Wars movie ever made. So people will come at me for that. A lot of people will come
Then
at
you
me.
got a
for
lot of blank stares from that. We're like,
Yeah.
It's an opinion.
But that-
I'm just gonna say
but
that.
that's
Yeah, I'm
what
not gonna be a
saying.
hypocrite, so I'm gonna stay quiet.
Right? No, exactly. But like, I get what you. But it's that type of thing, right? Where it's
We
like,
care so much about
Yeah.
this stuff, you know, that we're hurting each
Exactly.
other's feelings without meaning to.
yeah.
right? Exactly. But no, that's cool. We're actually getting our tickets for the re-release too. We're pretty.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna watch it on the 4th. Yeah, we have to watch it on the 4th. Why wouldn't we watch it on the
Nice.
4th?
Exactly.
But
It
I
has
remember,
the best
I
Star
remember
Wars
the midnight
music,
showing.
I would
So
say. Yeah, that the score for what is it? What is it called? The Duel of the Fates.
Duel of the Fates.
Dun, 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 dun. I can't.
Top
we're gonna-
notch Star Wars, right
Yeah,
there.
that's like
Yep.
peak
Easily.
John Williams right there.
Yeah, peak
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I remember when I was doing like a rewatch of the movies, my most recent time. That song is like still gives chills and goosebumps. It's such a
Mhm.
good one.
It's really good. It's
You can find like a 10-hour edit of it on
Mhm.
YouTube
Yeah.
where it just keeps going.
You can find a 10-hour edit of anything on YouTube.
You can't.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
So let's go back to Geek Therapy a little bit. So I am curious. So you did mention it's a nonprofit.
Mhm.
I am very curious how can people get involved with Geek Therapy? Do you guys take donations? How can people help and how can people spread the word and maybe get people to learn about Geek Therapy? And is it mainly in the United States? Are there other? Is there anywhere else across the globe that Geek Therapy is active or anything like that? Yeah.
Such good questions. Okay, so one thing is, yeah, I mean, you can donate on like towards the mission. Absolutely, like there's ways to donate on the website. We are always trying to. We think that a big way to do this is by creating content. So over the years, we've produced like over 1,000 different podcast episodes primarily. So like I enjoy doing this a lot.
Yeah.
We have a Disney podcast, which is one of our like right now we have only 2 that are currently active. We have a Disney podcast, and the last episode that came out was on X-Men 97.
Oh,
And we have our general GT radio, which is our Geek Therapy main podcast. Over the years, we've had a few different topics that we focused on, including for a while we had an Assassin's Creed podcast.
Oh, that is so cool.
Because
Bro.
one of our people that was his thing. He loved it so much. He could view the world through Assassin's Creed. And our take is that
So cool.
if you have a student or a client who's really into it, or in your case, right? Like, oh, my son is really into Assassin's Creed. I don't really know much about it. I'd like to learn more. May I recommend?
Yeah.
Right? Like we've made
Yeah.
content about this. For Steven Universe, we were going episode by episode. There's actually, we haven't published an episode. We have like 150 episodes of different podcasts that have not been published because of editing and stuff, and because it's just hard work and we're all volunteers. But we started doing a Babylon 5 podcast. I don't know if you're into sci-fi.
Oh yeah.
And there was one person who has watched it multiple times, and it's like their life philosophy comes from this science fiction show. And then I'd never watched it, so I'm watching it for the first time. And we're having real world conversations about religion and politics and relationships, right? Because like that show is good, but it's
amazing.
But seeing it through the eyes of someone who lives and breathes it is very different than just like a casual observer, right? So a big way that people can help is like pitch ideas to us. about what content would you like to create. Like, we have the tools and the resources available to help people set stuff up. We did an anime podcast once. It was just like a limited series, like 10 episodes. It was called The Anime That Changed Me. And it was like stories about people who were like, oh, like this was a transformative experience for me when I watched this show, or when this happened, or this happened when, I was in this relationship, etc. Like those conversations, we think that they're very meaningful. And so we're building a content library. If people want to write for us, we're absolutely open to that. And really, we go where our volunteers kind of want to go. If it aligns with our mission and you're really into a particular thing, let's go that way. So right now, like Disney is one of those.
That's
Disney
so
has made
cool.
it very easy because Disney is Star Wars and Marvel too now, right? So we can that makes it very simple. But we try to, and it's a way for us to practice what we're talking about. And like
Practice
the thing
what you
about
preach.
and I think geek culture is one thing, and pop culture is slightly different in that like pop culture is now in a sense. Right. And so we're all talking about this thing that happens. And sometimes that only happens for a week, right? But there's a conversation that we can all have and we all kind of get it. And then, but geek culture is like, oh, these people are going into it and they're still doing that, right? And so just tapping into that like power of that community is really what we're doing.
Okay, very cool. And they could find you. So I actually was looking at you guys' Facebook page earlier. You guys can go over there and like Geek Therapy on Facebook. Some great articles, some great reviews I was reading on there. I saw the latest Late Night with the Devil. I happened to see that one too, and that was incredible. And I read the review and spot on. I was like, yes, this person gets it.
Cool.
Amazing.
Yeah. We've got reviews coming out. I mean, we're always trying different things. We're trying to do everything. Again, we have an identity crisis. We're running like a professional organization with, My Hero and then Spider-Man and stuff like that. And then on the other side, like we're making podcasts and creating content and reviewing stuff, having relationships with publishers while also seeking grant funding to, further the stuff that we're doing in academic journals. And so I think we can do both.
Absolutely. No, 100%.
I believe you guys can do both.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you guys,
Thanks a lot.
you guys check out geektherapy.com for a lot of the information and follow them on social. Do you guys have like you guys just have Facebook, or is there Instagram, Twitter, or anything like that?
We've grabbed that Geek Therapy on everything.
Okay.
But social media is hard.
It is.
You can find us at Geek Therapy everywhere. Geektherapy.org. You'll find us.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
check out on podcast services. Check out Geek Therapy Network, and a few of our shows are out there.
I have to subscribe to that. And I have one more quick question because I'm very, very curious about this, and I don't know why I torture myself, but I do. Like I said before, I suffer from severe anxiety, but I love horror. Horror is one of my favorite genres, right? And I've heard a lot of people say the same thing. They like suffer, they have anxiety, but they love going to scary movies and be scared and to kind of deal with their anxiety. Is there a sign of a science behind that you know of, or is it just like people just being crazy and just doing that? Because I feel like it's very therapeutic for me, because by the time I come out of that horror movie, I feel like I went through an experience. Actually makes me feel better in a weird way. I don't know if it's just the way that my brain's wired or whatever. But does that make sense? Do you ever get that? I mean, have you heard that before? That isn't something that's new to me, right?
No, you aren't. Yeah, you're not special.
No, I know. That's good. I figured,
a lot of people.
I wasn't.
I think there's two concepts that I think of. One is meta emotions.
Mm-hmm.
It's the idea that you're afraid of being afraid.
Okay.
Right? Sometimes we are afraid of being afraid of something. We're not actually afraid of the thing. And you'd be surprised how much of therapy is dealing with that, how much of our anxieties are dealing with that. Because like me too. I take medication. My ADHD is terrible. Like I have a lot of things are hard sometimes, and depending on where we're at. So I understand. I also have therapists. and when it comes to this idea of meta emotions of anxiety, we're so anxious that we're anxious about eventually being anxious. And when you're going to a horror movie, like you kind of know what you're getting into.
Exactly.
So you've bypassed that first. Like you're not afraid of that fear, because you kind of know what you're getting into. And there's a
That makes
very
sense.
big difference. Like I would invite anybody to reflect a little bit on that. I'm like, am I really afraid? Like, what am I actually afraid of? And sometimes we're just like, we hate feeling afraid
Right.
of certain things. And that's the one time where you're like, I'm choosing this. If we faced other things that same way, if we faced challenges
Mm.
in that way in our own lives, we would feel different about them.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
I kind of talk about this in class a little bit, and I talk about like the job that we have as artists, as like the creators of like the content, right? The creators of the movies and the video games and everything. And like as artists, like you're in the business of manipulation, right? Like that's, I think we should all be under. And it's not like this is we're not magicians. It's not like we're pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. It's an agreement. You come to the theater to have a cathartic experience in a safe. You go to the movies with the experience and the agreement that I want you to scare me. I want you to make me laugh.
I want you to pull these strings.
Yes,
please.
I want you to make me cry in this safe, controlled environment, like where I get to experience these things, and then walk out the same person I was, but getting to have this experience again, like you were talking about, like be able to like work through my experiences through like watching somebody else's experiences, or like watching another life, or watching a story, whether it's Game of Thrones or whatever, but like being able to work through my stuff by seeing how somebody else, even fictional albeit, it's still helpful, what I mean? Even to watch something like American Psycho is still like, definitely don't want to be that person,
Right.
Or I'm watching Nightcrawler, I'm like, yeah, that's icky. So like as a horror movie or whatever, I think there's still some kind of therapeutic, thing that we can take away from it. I don't know what I'm talking about now.
I mean, I think you're talking about like taking that time to reflect on the experience, and then what is coming up for you, right? Like sometimes you're like, oh, well, whatever. Like you can watch the same movie multiple times
and take some.
And one time it's like, oh
yeah,
it really made me think this time, or about this, because your life is your life is different today than the last time you watched the movie.
Mm-hmm.
We just talked about Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, like last week or the week before.
Watch that after a breakup. Very different.
Right now. So, okay. I feel like I watch this movie every 7 years, and every time it's different. Like, because it's a different part of my life, and it hits me totally differently. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. It's powerful. It's powerful stuff. And so yeah, I think with like the horror, like that's you taking control in a way of something.
Okay.
Right.
I saw something on TikTok yesterday. It's been on my mind. I'm going to share it. I think it's kind of relevant.
Yeah.
It said, I've learned from video games that if I've encountered an enemy, I'm moving in the right direction.
That is true. Yes.
Love that.
And I was like, oh, man, that's good. Right. It's like, again, it's like, how do you reframe something? Right. It's like, it's a challenge, but like, oh yeah, it's a challenge. It's an opportunity.
Yeah.
To make a decision, to grow as a person, to overcome, to feel a triumph. But if you see an enemy or a challenge or an obstacle and you feel negative about it, which we usually do is our default, then yeah, that's when we can feel anxious and we can feel uncomfortable.
Gosh, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. So, Josué, thank you so much for being here. Like I said, go visit geektherapy.com, .com, correct?
.org, mainly. .com will work, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it should. It better.
Follow them on Facebook. And also the tags, the Therapeutic and Applied Geek and Gaming Summit takes place April 19th through the 21st. So that's coming up really soon. And where's that? It's taking place in... I have the information right here.
Yep. So it's completely online, and you can find it at geektherapy.org. Gotcha. And you can find links to it there, or tags.geektherapy.org. And if you're listening to this after the date, like I said, we have a vault pass, so you can go in and you can get access to older presentations that are yeah,
Awesome.
there's a lot of really great ones in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited to dig into those. We're very excited to check
Mhm.
them out and learn a little bit about ourselves and how to deal with that. So that's really cool.
And how to maybe help others.
Yeah, and how to help others and build the communities,
Yeah.
which is what it's all about. Super, super important. So yeah, thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for checking out the show. As usual, keep an eye on Pastrami Nation on socials. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on X or Twitter, whatever, Twix. We're on Twix, we're
I
on
know.
TikTok, we're on all that stuff. You can follow me, Kevin Hoskinson, or Kevin_Hoskinson on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. We're doing a lot of Lego stuff on there. Getting back to it again, so I'm very, very excited. That's my form of therapy. Legos, my thing. I love it. Absolutely love it. It helps me relax.
I've taught workshops on how to use Lego
Oh,
in therapy. It's so
you'll
good.
have to. We actually have a show called Brick Therapy, which is
Join
just
us.
Fantastic.
which is just us
I'm
talking
in.
about Lego. Yeah, you'll definitely have to join us for one of those. Definitely, that'd be a lot of
Cool.
fun. And of course, Christian, where can they find you?
Christian Accord on Instagram, but more importantly, everybody follow Geek Therapy on Instagram, on Facebook. Please, I
Yeah.
just gave you guys a follow too, so I'm happy. It's a pleasure meeting you. Please join us on. You are our people, man. Like you should be
absolutely, absolutely. It was an
I'm
honor.
at home
and a
here.
privilege.
Yeah, let's go. Let's
It
do
was.
it.
Yeah, it was an honor and a privilege to have you here. And then, so thank you all for watching. Thank you all for checking out the show. And we're going to find out the answer to a question after we're off air. We will talk to you guys later, and you guys have a good night. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.